back, everybody, to another episode of the Alchemy Podcast. Fired up for today's guest, an old high school rival, sports rival, and now performance and mental health coach at BYU, Braden Brown. Welcome, brother.
Fired up to be here, Doug. Yeah. Thanks for having me, man.
I was thinking about our high school days because we went to rival high schools. We graduated the same class. We also played the same sports, basketball and football. You were a much better athlete than I was, right? Because you were like first team All-State and you ended up play college. I was like bench warmer plus. And but we always kind of got lined up against each other. And there was a couple of battles that came to my mind. And so the first one that actually came to my mind was in a basketball game. I don't know if you remember this. Not the game you got ejected. We'll get to that one. But there was a game where it was our junior year and I had gotten 0 varsity basketball playing time. And we were both ranked like really high. Cottonwood, I went to Cottonwood, you went to Highland. Yep. We were both ranked really, really high. And when we were playing at Cottonwood, we beat you. And we were up by a lot, and it was kind of like this big upset. And I got my first varsity playing time. First time ever playing varsity basketball. And I got subbed in and on a free throw. And I think it was Stanley Havili was shooting, right? And you were kind of on the block. And he missed the second one. And I don't know what happened, but I bumped you. I think you like tripped over something, like you fell down, and I got the rebound and I put it back up and in. And it was the first points I've ever scored in varsity. And it was like the highlight of my junior year. And some fluke happened where you tripped, but it looked like you got pushed or whatever. And it was just like, oh my gosh, it was like the only time I got a one up on you. And then the rest of our high school career, you just beat my ass, like in football and smoked me. And then in basketball, I think you elbowed me and cut my eye open and got ejected or something. You were throwing elbows at me.
It was payback for you putting me on a poster.
Payback. So I got one win, and then I think you got 10 because I also remember in our senior year of high school football, you were playing D end, and I was offensive tackle, and you just ran circles around me. But we had some intimate battles.
Yeah, I think you're being a little bit too humble and giving me too much credit, Doug, because I remember it a little bit differently. But this is just a perfect example of perception is reality. I think what actually happened is you bodied me, and I was frustrated because I was embarrassed that not only did I get bodied, but I gave up an easy bucket.
Yeah.
And so that next year, I think, and we were both like big, strong, competitive
we were both big
dudes.
guys.
I think we were football players playing basketball, right?
Yep.
And so that was kind of the payback. And we were probably chirping because, that's
it was fun.
Yeah, it's just, all in the fun of the game. But good times. That was one of a few games that I was ejected from.
Yeah.
And then people watching this or listening are probably thinking like, how does a guy who's so unhinged go on to be a director of mental health and performance? But
bro, I remember you had some moments where you would get fired up.
Yeah, I've tried to reframe it as I was just a very passionate and fiery competitor.
Yeah, I remember the next year in the game, we were running down the court after a play or something, and we were always like chirping and like bodying each other. And I remember you just started throwing elbows at me really hard, and one of them hit me in the eye in my eyebrow, and it split open. And that was the first time I ever had to get like stitches. Yeah, and then I think that was the game you got ejected. Yeah.
And despite all those differences, we're still able to coexist and be boys after all these years.
And so that was the highlight of, for me. And then you ended up obviously doing some great things and, top performer and ended up playing for the Cougs for multiple years. And you've lost some weight. You got real. I remember seeing you in college and I'm like, oh, Braden's a freaking animal.
Yeah, I was like 245 when I first went to BYU. I was recruited there as a tight end, and then halfway through
recruited you?
Like at BYU specifically?
Yeah.
Who was the coach that recruited me? I can't remember who the tight end coach was back in the day.
Yeah. It
was like Coach Doman and Coach and I.
And who was the head coach for you?
Coach Mendenhall was the head coach.
Yeah, Bronco was coach.
Yeah.
Cool. Yeah. And so that you went on to go, because you remember you were a tight end in high school, weren't you?
Yeah. So I committed to BYU as a tight end, and then I redshirted in 2008 as a tight end. That was a fun experience on the scout team, just getting your butt kicked every single day.
Yeah.
And literally getting told by the coach that if they're not trying to fight you, then you're not doing it right. So basically telling us to go fight these, starting defensive guys and like Jan Jorgensen, Colby Clausen, who's one of my colleagues now, total stud. But and then, so 2009, I started third string tight end behind Andrew George and Dennis Pitta, who were total studs.
All time guys.
And then halfway through that year, Coach and I, the offensive coordinator, asked if I wanted to do some cross training at tackle. And I was like, sure. I weighed 255 pounds, ended up actually starting 2 games that year. And then it was the University of Utah game, 2009, where I had my welcome to college football moment.
What was that? I don't know what that is.
You can find this clip online. I used to be embarrassed by it, so I would try to not bring it up because it was one of those moments where I'm like, if I could just decompose into Lavelle Edwards Stadium soil right now, that would be very
just
ideal.
Bury me here.
So it was our starting left tackle, Matt Reynolds, was a total stud. Went down with an injury or something, so they put me in. I'm 255 pounds, left tackle, lined up from Koa Misi.
Oh, Koa's like...
And that dude...
He's a legend.
Yeah, he got drafted in the second round by the
NFL
Dolphins.
player.
Yeah, total stud. And I took 2 kick steps, and he ragdolled me, buried me into the ground, climbed over my body, sacked Max Hall. It was almost a fumble, and that would have been game over.
Yeah.
And that was one of those moments like, that really just happened in front of 64,000 people and then millions of people watching online.
Welcome to college football.
Yeah.
Yeah. What's it like to be the recipient of a video, a highlight like that?
Man, I'll tell you right now, it was not fun. And it instilled a lot of fear in me for the rest of my career because just kind of how our brains are wired, we want to avoid painful experiences. And for me, that was a very embarrassing and painful moment. So I'm like, I can't let that happen again. So I played a lot of my career afraid to get beat, which, I ended up putting on 55 pounds after that year because I realized I had to get bigger and stronger, and ended up starting sophomore, junior, senior year at tackle. But it really wasn't until my senior year when I finally met with a sports-psych guy where I'm like, I got to get out of my head because this is just not it,
Yeah. So take me back to that moment because, we've all have done things in our life where we have shame or we're embarrassed or disappointing. What was the film session like after that moment?
Man. First off, I think I tried finding a way to not have to go to practice on Monday because we don't do anything on Sunday at BYU, right? So Monday was the first time we actually go over the game film, and I knew that what happened was bad, and I'd already watched it like 10 times on the rerun. But it was embarrassing because you're sitting there in front of all your teammates, your coaches, and you're just put on blast, and there's no hiding. So it's one of those things where it's like you just got to take it and own it and try to move on and do better next time. But it was not one of the greatest film sessions of my life.
Yeah. So now, because I want to get into this whole mental performance thing, right? And so I'm curious from the different perspective of a coach, is there effective ways of delivering feedback versus ineffective ways? Because it seems like some of the feedback you got was like it struck fear in you. Yeah. And then kind of actually affected your performance.
Yeah. And I think a lot of it too was just like my own self-sabotage. I was so hard on myself because I was such a big competitor, and I was my own worst critic by far. Yeah. And so I think in the heat of the moment for coaches, because, and since I've graduated and I've gone on to be on the other side of things now, it's like, it's a stressful profession. Yeah. You're basically, your job and livelihood and where you live and what you do with your family is dependent on what a bunch of 18 to, I guess at BYU, 26-year-olds do on the field or what they don't do. Right. And so in the heat of the moment, it's easy to kind of, go unhinged and what are you doing and bleeping this and bleeping that. But to answer your question, yes, there are certainly more effective ways to give feedback than there are not, but it's a lot easier said than done, especially when you're in the heat of the moment and it, just happened. Yeah. Is there any strategies that come to mind? Because a lot of people listening to this podcast are leaders in entrepreneurship or sales world where they kind of manage other people. And, as a leader, your job is to inspire someone to be a better version of themselves. And at the same time, just mistakes are being made. And if someone makes a mistake, that could actually cost you. There's direct consequences for you if your team doesn't perform well. And so having been in the coaching industry and you're a coach yourself, are there specific frameworks or ideas on how to deliver clear feedback without, being really, really hard on a player, which is going to cause them to fold? Yeah, that's a great question. And I think the answer is yes, but it's you have to do it really delicately. And I think that it really depends on your relationship with the person that you're talking to. Yeah. Because if you have a really strong established relationship with someone, that feedback might be a little bit more harsh than if you don't have a great relationship with somebody. But one of the things that I've kind of learned over the years is trying to develop a better understanding, just try to see it through their eyes. Walk me through what happened on this for you. Because I jumped to my conclusions based off of what I saw, but I might not have the full picture or context of what was going on in this person's mind. And I think that's where you can use it to create a teaching and learning experience of just, obviously the outcome was not great, but let's kind of walk through the process of what helped you get to that point, and then let's try to, build solutions or navigate around that aspect of it.
Yeah, it's like that seek first to understand principle, the Stephen Covey principle, right?
For sure. Connect before you correct.
Yeah. Say that again.
Connect before you correct.
Connect before you correct. I've never heard that before.
Yeah.
Yeah. Connect before you correct. Yeah, that's such a powerful insight. Walk us through your story, because obviously, you put on 55 pounds, you're kind of living in fear not to screw up. And then you said you eventually met with a psychologist, sports psychologist yourself.
So it was a random guy, because I was kind of known. It's funny when you talk to my former teammates, they're like, dude, you're the one who's helping people with their mental health. Yeah. Like, you were psycho. You know?
I remember those days. I experienced those days.
Yeah. So, and for me, it's like, yeah, but it's a great reminder that A, people can change, and B, I think that because I had that experience, and not to say that people that meet with me have to be psycho or have problems. And that's actually one of the things I'm constantly fighting against, is helping these guys understand, like, that there is a lot of value in being proactive and learning skills before it gets to that point where you're just kind of unhinged and don't really know how to handle things well. And that's ultimately why I went into this work, because I realized for me, like, physically, I was blessed with a lot of gifts. Mm-hmm. I'm 6'6" and pretty athletic, depending on who you talk to and what sport we're playing. Mentally, by far, was what got in my way of reaching my full potential. And so I wanted to learn from my own experience. And then I also realized, like, with some of my teammates, that it's a big part of sport, the mental side. So I really wanted to become an expert in how to help people do things way better than I did them, so that they can give themselves a better chance to reach their full potential.
Yeah. And in your story specifically, was there a breaking point where it's like, okay, enough is enough. The pain is so intense. I'm so stuck in my head. Did you like reach out for help, or did someone reach out to you? And based on how that worked, like, what were some of the biggest takeaways you got early on in your receiving coaching?
Yeah, I think it was like my senior year. And at that point, I'd started every game as a sophomore, every game as a junior, and I had battled through some injuries. And so that was kind of a mental roadblock for me as well. And I think that's kind of how it was introduced to me, because there's such a stigma when it comes to mental health, especially with football players, because, we all think that we're all these big tough guys. Yeah. Like, I don't need help. I don't need to talk about my mentals. And so I think it was framed to me like, it's normal when you're coming back through an injury to have doubts and, worries. And so it could be helpful just to talk to someone. And so I went and met with a guy. I can't even remember what his name is, but he was a sports-psych guy. And I literally met with him one time. And for me, that's all it took to completely shift my perspective.
What did he say? I mean, only one session?
Yeah, one session. Yeah. So he's like, so ultimately because for me, it was like, I'm so sick and tired of living in this like panic state and just like fear state where I'm just like so worried and concerned about every play. And it was exhausting mentally.
Was that bleeding into your personal life too?
For sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. 100%. And so I met this guy and he goes, he's like, ultimately, what's your biggest fear on the field? And I said, giving up a sack. And then I remember like tracing it back to, because I gave up a big sack in a big moment. And so of course my brain's going to want to protect that from happening again. Sure. And he's like, so help me understand just from like a objective standpoint, like, why are you on the field? Like, why have you been a starter the last 3 years? And full transparency, I was so hard on myself that it was even hard for me to say, because, like I deserve to be here because I'm good enough. Like in my mind, I thought it was just complete luck. And just because they didn't have anyone else to put out there.
So is that how you responded? It was just like, I'm lucky.
Yeah, I'm like, honestly, I don't know. And
like
he's like,
the last option.
For sure. Like I just got lucky. He's like, okay, well, I mean, you're playing at BYU. It's not like a chump change school. So it's like it would be fair to say that you have to have like a baseline level of ability and talent in order to be out there. And I said, okay, sure. Like I can work with that. And then he goes, tell me about the guys that line up across from you, like the defensive ends and outside linebackers from University of Utah and Florida State, Ole Miss, Notre Dame. Like, why are they on the field? And I'm like, because they are really good players. And he goes, so isn't it? And he goes, what's their job? Because he asked me like what my job is as a tackle. And I said, protect the quarterback.
Yeah.
Well, what's their job? To get to the quarterback.
Yeah.
And he's like, so isn't it fair to assume that every once in a while, these really talented, really good players whose job it is literally to beat you, that's going to happen every once in a while? And for me, it was such a simple concept, but I'm like, dude, just get over it. Like, it happens. You're going to get beat. And so he said, instead of focusing so much on the fear of getting beat and all that entails, like, why don't you focus on the things that are going to put you in the best position to succeed in the rep and to win the rep? So it was just a total shift in focus. It helped put things in perspective. It's not the end of the world. It happens. That was the first point. And then the second point was it's just shifting focus from a fear-based mentality to action-oriented. What are the things that are within my control that I can focus on that's going to put me in the best position to win this rep?
Wow. I mean, so insightful, right? It really just seems like you're just zooming out.
Yeah.
Right. And gaining perspective. And what differences did you see after that? Was that like a switch has been flipped and now it's changed, or was it kind of hard to integrate and you kind of fall back into these old patterns? Or, I mean, it's one thing to kind of get information that makes sense and clicks. It's another thing to implement it.
For sure.
Right.
Yeah. As my good friend, Dr. Phil says, he's not my good friend. I wish he was.
Yeah.
Awareness without action is pointless. Right.
Yeah.
So I had the awareness, but then it was up to me to be intentional about implementing that. But I do think that it was helpful just to kind of go into each practice and each game with that mindset of, it's not a matter of if I get beat. It's a matter of, okay, what can I focus on that's within my control that's going to give me the best chance? And I think just being intentional about that mindset was really helpful. I still had moments where I was worried about getting beat, but then I catch myself and say, okay, what's going to help me win this rep? What are things I can control to give myself a chance?
You know, and I love that insight too, because the reality is, like, especially in life and business, work, whatever it may be, we're going to get beat at one point. Like, not a matter of if you fail, it's when. And so I'm assuming you had plays after that where you may have misstep or, missed a block or something. How did you recover after these kind of conversations that was helpful versus kind of maybe an older Braden seemed like he was really, really hard on himself. He'd ruminate on it, right?
For sure.
How do you recover when you miss your block per se?
Yeah, that's a great question. And that's honestly probably what I spend most of my time with working with athletes at BYU on is how do we bounce back from adversity and from mistakes? And I would like to say that I was a master at it, but the reality is that I probably still was super hard on myself. But then I tried to, and one of the questions I pose to my athletes is, okay, what's the next best thing that I can do in this moment?
Yeah.
Because it doesn't matter how hard we try, no matter how much we want to change what happened last play, there's literally nothing that we can do about it.
Yeah.
And what I tell people is it's not about not being frustrated or disappointed, because of course it is, right? Like it matters to you. You're a competitive person. No one likes to get beat. But can we acknowledge that frustration, embarrassment, whatever the feeling is, and then use it as fuel and channel it into something that's helpful in the current moment that's actually going to give me a chance to do better on this play than last play?
So one thing that I love too, they just reminded me, is one of our mutual friends, Riley Jensen, sports-psych. Love Riley all time. He taught me an acronym for peak performance called How Do I Win? WIN. Mm-hmm. So let's say you mess something up, you screw up on a play or screw up on a business deal, or, in your marriage, you misspoke or something. How do I win? WIN, which stands for what's important now.
Yep.
Right. I messed up. Can't change the past. Can't redo that. But looking forward, what is important now in this moment?
For sure. I love that.
The next rep. Right. And so it sounds almost, exactly kind of what you're sharing here is how do we move forward when we make mistakes? I'm curious, obviously you're the mental health coach for BYU, right? What do most of the athletes struggle with? Is it the self-talk that's running? Is it that they play with fear? Is that they get so neurotic on the situations? But like when people are coming to you, athletes are coming to you, what are kind of like the main things you're seeing that are commonalities between these athletes? I
would say perfectionism. Managing perfectionism is a huge thing. And especially now with how the landscape of college sports works and like the NIL and all the roster cuts and all that stuff, like there's so much pressure now and a lot of angst that's created as a result, because it's not a matter of, I'm going to just be on the 130-man roster kind of on the sideline. Now it's like, I legitimately can get cut from this team.
Yeah.
And no longer have a position on this team.
Yeah.
And so that kind of creates a sense of urgency. And then that kind of creates this environment for the person where it's like every single play matters. And if I screw up on one play, then like I just ruined my chances, sort of thing. So a lot of the work that I do is trying to help people keep things in proper perspective and context, and helping them understand, like, well, of course you want to do well and play well and be perfect, but like the reality is, and most of the athletes get this, that it's just not how it works. Yeah. So kind of going back to what you were just saying, is it's not a matter of if you screw up and make a mistake. It's okay, how do I respond and what's my plan for when it happens, not if. And I think that's where a lot of people struggle, is they wait till the moment when it happens to try to figure out the solution. But if I can commit beforehand, like before practice, going into practice, saying, okay, if I make a mistake, this is what I'm going to do. This is my plan.
Yeah, planning, preparing for when that happens, how you're going to respond.
100%. Yeah. Because then you can be a lot more proactive in that situation when it does happen, instead of being reactive when all these, really powerful emotions are in the driver's seat.
Yeah. Because this was a question I've always had, like what impact does it have on an athlete where you think about these kids, especially with the NIL, like the NIL, you're going to juice up all these athletes. It's like, you're amazing. And this, really ego oriented. And these guys are being recruited at a high school. If you're playing at BYU, right? D1, really, respected and prestigious football school. Like, Cougars can ball, right? And so when you get recruited, you're like the man in your high school. If you're getting recruited by BYU, you're like an elite athlete.
Yeah.
And you're used to performing at high levels, and you're used to making plays, and you're used to being successful. And then you get thrown onto a team where maybe you just don't get reps anymore. And maybe you're not seeing the field, and maybe you're not the guy anymore.
Yeah.
Right. How does someone handle that? Because the way I look at that in like business is like, obviously we want to continuously grow and expand and push ourselves. And what got you to $1 million business isn't what's going to get you to a $10 million business. Right. And so in athletics, how do you help navigate an athlete who is used to being the guy? Mm-hmm. I'm the captain, I'm the guy, I make the plays. And now, sophomore year, they haven't seen the field yet.
Yeah.
Right. I'm sure that has a massive effect on their state.
For sure. And that's probably the second most common thing that I deal with, is just helping navigate that transition. Because it's tough for the ego. You start doubting yourself and your ability. I certainly experienced that when I showed up to BYU and I'm watching Dennis Pitta out there running routes and Andrew George. I'm like,
legends.
I'm like, there is zero chance I'm going to play football here. Like, if that's what I'm expected to do, and I was just being real with myself. Like, I don't move like that. Dennis Pitta was converted wide receiver to tight end. And I still haven't seen a tight end to this day that runs better routes than
and he
Dennis
had a great
Pitta
NFL career too, right?
Yeah. And he still might be playing in the NFL if he didn't jack up his hip like Bo Jackson.
Yeah.
My man already has a hip replacement. Shout out to my boy DP. But it's just, it's a natural part of that process. And then I first off, I try to normalize it for these athletes, right? Like, I think everybody comes into this with that kind of moment where you realize, like, man, I'm no longer just the dude.
Yeah.
Now I'm on a team with everyone just like me. And so now I have to figure out, so what is it actually going to take for me to get on the field? And that's one of the things I just had this conversation with 3 athletes before I came over here today, is kind of this frustration and disappointment and even embarrassment about, I was expecting to be on the field and to be a contributor, and I'm not. And first off, I say, those emotional responses to me are totally normal. They're not the issue. Now we decide if we're going to use those to help us get better, or if we're going to use them as fuel to get bitter. Mm-hmm. And that's a choice that we get to make, right?
Yeah. I never even thought about the embarrassment thing, right? So I'm thinking about, like, okay, if I'm a high school athlete, 3-4 star, I'm kind of the man on the team, I'm the captain, I'm getting the girls in high school, right? I'm, feeling really cool. And then, your family's all hyped and, oh, cool, I commit to BYU and, like, I'm fired up, and BYU's, they really highlight their athletes here, and it's a college town. And then you show up and you're just not performing. Like, I never even thought about, like, the personal embarrassment of, like, oh, I'm letting my family down, I'm letting my friends down. Like, that's massively got to affect performance and ego.
Yeah. Yeah. And I love when guys are actually able to connect with that, because for a lot of guys, it kind of manifests as anger and just, resentment, whatever else. But beneath the surface, there's usually a more powerful emotion, whether it's embarrassment or sadness or shame or something like that. And when they can finally connect what's really going on, then we can start to unpack, let's dive into that a little bit more. Let's talk more about embarrassment and what that feels like. And then maybe it's, showing up because of perceptions that we have that might not be realistic, right? And helping them put things back in proper perspective. But that's one of the things, and I can't coin this, I don't even know where I got it from, but it's kind of like, so it's not your time yet. You'll walk in my room and you'll see a comma with the word yet, because I'm a huge believer in the power of yet.
Tell us more about that. What does that mean to you?
So, for example, a lot of people will say, like, I'm not very good at this, or I'm not on the team. I feel like I'm not on the team, or I'm not on the field. And if we end the sentence there, it's kind of like we don't really give ourselves an opportunity to feel like there's growth. or that there's opportunity. But if we add that small little word yet, now all of a sudden that tells us that, okay, there is opportunity, there is possibility, but it really depends on what I do with the time in between now and when I get my opportunity, because the time's going to pass regardless, right? And it's what we do in that time that's going to influence what the opportunities are going to be down the road.
Yeah, it's so good. It really just seems like it's making that switch from a fixed mindset to a growth mindset.
100%.
Right. And I look about it like in my life, I'm like, okay, where do I struggle with that? You know, and for me, like where I hold shame is like, okay, I'm 36, you know, I'm single, never been married. All my friends are like on their second and third kid.
Yeah.
And I'm like, dang, is this ever going to happen for me? And it's like, oh, I'm just not married yet.
Yeah.
You know, it just kind of changes the energetic relationship I have with that.
For sure. And everyone's path is so different. You know, when I worked out at IUPUI in Indiana, I had athletes who were like, yeah.
Wait, you worked at IUPUI?
Yeah.
Tell me more about that.
Yeah. So I was there for about 4.5 years.
Okay. I didn't know that.
Part of my PhD program, I did 2 years of coursework and then a year of an internship. So we originally moved to Indiana so that I could be a behavioral science faculty at a family medicine residency, which I absolutely loved. I loved working with the residents and kind of helping with the, you know, mental health side of what they were dealing with. Sure. But also during that time, I was introduced to the athletic director at IUPUI, Dr. Perry at the time. And I kind of told him about my background and, you know, licensed therapist and, you know, former athlete. And, you know, I'd love to work with athletes. And he basically was like, when can you start helping our athletes? I'll hire you today. And I was like, I would literally start today if I could. Yeah. And so then I kind of served in a dual role as behavioral science faculty at the family medicine residency. And then I was the director of counseling and mental performance for IUPUI athletics. Wow. Ended up doing that for about 4.5 years. And that for me, when I first started working with athletes, I was like, okay, this is the thing. This is my dream job. This is what's so fulfilling and gives me so much purpose and excitement and energy. And that's when I knew I had to work with athletes long term. Yeah, found your passion. For sure. So how did you transition to BYU? Was this something you seeked out, or how did that connection come together? Man, when I look back at the journey to get here, I still have to pinch myself because it's so hard to believe. And I think there was some divine intervention involved. So he was actually one of my former teammates, Kurt Henderson. He was working for a company called Ampellis. Like Kurt, our boy Kurt Sandlot. Yeah, shout out Kurt. Kurt's my boy. Yeah, I love Kurt. I'm in the sauna. Shout out Boss Ba. I'm in the sauna with Kurt bi-weekly. That's not surprising to hear that anyone who knows Kurt's in the sauna, because I know he's about that life. Yeah. Yeah, no, Kurt, I actually just shared his story as an athlete at BYU with one of the athletes that I was working with to kind of help them understand that, you know, it might not be a week, it might not be a year, but, you know, the only one who gets to decide how long it's going to be or when enough is you. Yeah. And I shared Kurt's story. We can share that another time, but super motivating and inspirational. What's the gist of Kurt's story for the listeners? He got cut from BYU's football team and started working with a mental performance coach, and then just had the resolve to make it happen. Walked back on the team, made the team as a walk-on, and then ultimately his senior year got put on scholarship and ended up playing in quite a few games. Yeah, his senior year. Got his touchdown called back. we always give him grief about that. Yeah. But yeah, no, Kurt's an inspiration, man. The one thing I love about Kurt, just shout out Kurt, is just he's so optimistic. Yeah. He's a get it done type of guy. 100%. Like he takes initiative, he grabs life by the horn. He's like, we're going to figure this out. And he does it. And this is what I admire about him the most. He does it with a pleasant attitude. Yes. It's like pleasant to be around. I got you. It's like, doesn't complain. It's not really intense. It's not overwhelming. It's just like, it's a very welcoming, loving, like, hey, we're going to figure this out. Yeah. And let's do it. And let's go to the moon. And you can't not have a conversation with Kurt and not just feel like $1 million and feel like just motivated to just change the world. So yeah, shout out Kurt. And I think that's what it is. I think you just put words to it. It's just like every time I'm around Kurt, I feel better about who I am. For sure. Yeah. Every single time. Yeah. He's the man. You got to have people like Kurt in your life. Shout out Kurt. Yeah. Yeah. For sure. Yeah. So Kurt got you over here. Yeah. So I didn't even know he was working with athletes, and he had posted, it was back when the time when the goalie from Stanford had taken her own life. I don't know that story. I can't remember what her name is. I should know this name, but Stanford goalie, her family's created this whole foundation
Hockey?
Now. Soccer. Okay. Yeah. And he just posted something on his Instagram story, and I'm sitting there in my tiny little room in the IUPUI student library. That's where I'd meet with athletes. It was like this tiny little, almost prison cell type thing. Yeah. Super rainy outside. My wife and I had just started the process of thinking it would be good to go back to Utah because that's where we're both from. Sure. And you guys were high school sweethearts, right? So I married a rival. So she went to East High School.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
We had a lot of mutual friends, never met in high school, which was probably a good thing. And then met after my first semester at BYU after she graduated from high school.
Cool. Yeah.
She actually tried setting me up with her best friend at the time, but then I was like, I'm more interested in you. So
you set me up with you.
yeah. Set me up with you. And then we can really start to talk.
Yeah.
So he posted this thing about this goalie, and he's like, this is why I love working with athletes on the mental side of things. And I was like, wait, dude, you work with athletes on the mental side? Like, tell me more. And then he kind of sent me a little thing about his company. And so kind of just jokingly, but also seriously and somewhat optimistic, I said, well, if you guys are ever looking to hire someone else, holler at your boy, And then he's like, well, actually, we are in the process of, bringing someone on to help me build out this coaching vertical, the mental health coaching vertical. And I was like, well, dude, essentially what you do as a non-licensed clinician is a lot of what I do as a licensed mental health professional. And so there's a lot of alignment in what we did.
Cool.
One conversation led to the next. And then it was like, all of a sudden, I'll never forget the phone call. Hey, just letting you know, I resigned from Ampellis, company that I used to work for before I joined BYU full-time. But he's like, now I think it makes even more sense for you to kind of step in and lead the charge on the mental performance stuff. And so it was crazy. And then we met with Tom Holmo and Brian Santiago. And because Tom was my athletic director, he kind of knew me and knew my background. And it was just, everything kind of just fell into place. And it was crazy.
Divine intervention.
Yeah. Super grateful though.
And what year was that? Did you come back?
So that was the end of 2022. And I officially started helping with BYU athletics January of 2023. This is my third year helping with the sport teams there.
So cool. And just on a nerdy sports level, people talk about the NIL all the time. And initially there was like a lot of pushback on it. I think NIL is awesome.
Yeah.
And here's why I think it's awesome. Because I think overall it's like the product of college football. I think it increases the product because athletes stay and there's higher incentives to perform well, right? And so an athlete, like you look at what was his name? The quarterback for Texas, Quinn.
Yeah, Quinn Ewers,
right? You look at him, he turned down like a massive NIL deal, right? And then got drafted in the NFL and he's making less money if he would have accepted the NIL deal.
Yeah.
In my head, I'm like, oh, so now college players were actually going to be incentivized to stay in school longer rather than how do I hurry and rush to get to the NFL?
Yeah.
So I think it increases the quality of the product.
For sure.
Yeah.
And it ups the level of competition because now it's like I have to make the team and like there's a lot of money involved if I do make the team and become that guy. So
yeah, and it seems like the NIL has been, I'm a Utah fan, but like NIL has been fantastic for BYU athletics. Yeah. Not just football, but basketball. And like, it's an exciting time to be a Cougar fan.
It is. It's an exciting time. And it's also one of those things where I'm like, man, I was just 10 years a little too early on the scene.
10 years too early.
But then I talked to guys that played back in the 70s and 80s and are like, dude, we didn't even have our own locker room and all this stuff. So it's, you just don't know what you don't know. But no, it's an interesting world we're living in right now with college sports.
Yeah. And so as a mental performance coach, right, and obviously you work with athletics, but, kind of on a broader scale, what are some of the top characteristic attributes that those who come in do well? Like, what are some things that, like, if you see an athlete come in with this specific mindset or this specific character attribute that really stands out and really those are the type of guys you see are going to succeed?
Yeah, that's a great question. The first thing that came to my mind is probably grit. Just the willingness to stick with something long-term, even when it's not going well. I feel like that's such a huge part of college athletics. And one of the soccer athletes I was working with the other day, freshman athlete, she was like, I was talking to my teammates and we decided that so much, like 95% of college sports is just learning how to respond to adversity and just keep showing up. And I said 100%. So I think the ability to have grit and resilience, and then also keeping in perspective why it is that you do it to begin with.
Yeah, keeping your why big.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I know it always sounds so cliche, but it's like I always start my conversations like, why do you do this?
Yeah.
Because if we can't connect back to the why and it's not meaningful enough to us, when it gets hard, it's way too easy just to say, I don't want to do this anymore.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah. I just got back from Tony Robbins with, a bunch of some of our mutual friends, and you hear it a million times. But it just rang true differently this time, where it's like the bigger the what do you want?
Yeah.
And the clearer the why of why you want it, the how takes care of itself.
For sure.
Right. The grit, kind of that part where you have to do the mundane task over and over again, and the reps and the sprints and the conditioning and the weightlifting, that part's actually easy.
Yeah.
If the what you want and why you want it is really clear. If your why you're doing this isn't clear and what you want there isn't a specific goal you're trying to get to, that grid of those early morning workouts and the sprints and, pushing yourself, it's just a lot harder.
For sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. When you have a strong enough why, it gives a purpose to the suffering and the difficult moments.
Yeah. How can someone increase their capacity to be more gritty?
Man, that's a great question. I feel like you just have to commit to doing it and just do it and learn how to evolve the relationship with challenge and with struggle. Because we're wired as humans when things get hard and things get difficult and challenging to kind of shy away from those things. Because our brain doesn't want to do things that are challenging and evoke some sort of physical or emotional pain. But if we can learn to view it as this is actually something that's going to help me get stronger and seek that out and embrace it, I think that that's a useful way to develop that skill set. And then also keeping in mind, like, again, why am I doing this?
Yeah.
Why would I be willing to endure some of these difficult moments? And that's got to be something that's important to me in order to do it.
Yeah. You talk about doing things you don't want to do. And, there's a big health craze right now with cold plunges. And it's like the cool thing. And there's, shout out Mitch Matthews and Flow House. I love that
Another
spot.
One of my former teammates. Love Mitch. Yeah.
Love Mitch. Yeah. And I've been on the cold plunge train for, probably 4 years now. And people talk about the health benefits. It's good for your skin or your, wakes you up, your alertness, whatever it may be, in recovery and yada, yada. I'm like, the number one reason why I do the cold plunge is because I hate it.
Yeah.
I hate it. Every single morning. It's like, it's funny. Even like this morning, like I have a routine where I try and get in the cold plunge within 20, 30 minutes of waking up.
Yeah.
And I keep mine, really uncomfortable, 39 degrees. And every morning I move slower and I'm like trying to procrastinate it. And I'm like, maybe I don't need to do it today. But the main reason why I cold plunge is because it's doing something in the morning that I don't want to do.
For sure.
And if I have this habit of like, I do the things I don't want to do, I realize that on days where I've been very consistent with cold plunge. Because I cold plunge, it makes my day run smoother.
Mm-hmm.
I can just handle things a little bit better. Right. And so you talk about grit, and I always say to increase your capacity to deal with grit and discomfort is honor and keep your commitment. Mm. And so if I'm working with someone one-on-one, like in my coaching business, and I'm like, hey, we got to work on your grit, I say, pick a task that you guarantee can get done. Just guarantee you can get done. That's not going to take a lot of time, and just commit to doing it. And so I always say, like, start with two things. Start with, number one, make your bed every morning. And number two, never go to sleep with dishes in the sink. Right? And just commit to doing that, because they're kind of annoying tasks, but they both take 30 seconds.
For sure.
But what you're really doing is you're wiring in your DNA that you're the type of person that honors and keeps commitments, and you do things when you don't want to do them. Because another reason I love those two examples, because at night before you go to bed, you're tired and you're agitated and you're like not in the mood and you're like sleepy. So like in that state, can I do something I don't want to do?
Yeah.
And in the morning, you're sleepy and kind of like groggy and waking up. And it's like, can I do a task I don't want to do?
For sure.
And so I love those two examples because they force you in a non-ideal state to do something that you don't want to do, and, really increases your capacity to deal with grit.
I love that.
Yeah.
And it's also a reminder, and I talk about this a lot with my athletes. I also have this written up on my whiteboard that, act, and then kind of the equal sign with the slash through it, feel. Because a lot of people think that my feelings get to dictate what I do or what I don't do. But the reality is that regardless of how we're feeling, we can still act in different ways. That's a perfect example. And I use the example, when my alarm goes off at 6 a.m, legitimately the first thought that comes to my mind is, heck no, like no chance. I'm way too tired. I don't want to do this. And I kind of start going through this mental battle. And then I reconnect it to, okay, so ultimately, why do I want to go to the gym? What are the benefits for me? Well, it's because it's in alignment with the value that I have to be as healthy as I can be. And I know that if I go to the gym in the morning, I'm going to be more patient and be in a better mood throughout the day. It's not because I feel like doing it. It's because I know that it's going to be more beneficial for me. Totally. And I think that gives people the confidence moving forward when they are faced with other difficult moments, that they can look back legitimately and authentically say that this is a hard moment and I've successfully navigated hard moments in the past, and I know that I can do it.
100%. And I look back at my career, when I was the company sales trainer for Vivint. And I had the incredible opportunity to travel to multiple different teams and organizations and kind of work with their leaders. I was able to pick up on some traits that kind of the top performers all had in common. And one of the top traits they all had in common is what I titled, they manage the system, not the emotion, right? Especially in a summer sales job, like emotions are really, really high. And athletes too, right? High highs, low lows, high highs. I mean, like your emotions are up and down and up and down. And if you make, to your point, make decisions based upon how you feel, you'll never create consistency. And I'll never forget, I have this really random memory. I was in Mexico with some friends, and it was during Christmas, New Year's break, like that, those 7 days between Christmas and New Year's, and you're just not like quite sure where you are on planet Earth because you're just, everything's out the window. And so we went to Mexico, and one of the nights we were out, we were at the resort, and we had a couple of drinks, and, we're kind of just enjoying our time. And I have a standard that I work out every day.
Yeah.
Right. Like, minimum 30 minutes. Like if it's like real low, I'm going to go to the gym, but I just need to get my body into a gym. And that's my standard. And so it was getting late at night. And I remember telling one of the people I was there with, I'm like, hey, I'm going to the gym tomorrow at 7:30. Do you want to come with me? And their response was, well, let me wake up and see how I feel. And I remember thinking like, there is a 0% chance this person comes.
Yeah.
Because how are you going to feel at 7:30 in the morning after staying up late and having a couple drinks in Mexico?
Yeah.
You'll be tired.
Yeah.
Right. And if you allow your emotions to dictate your behaviors, you'll never find consistency or kind of get through those breaking points of your growth zone to see the results you're looking for.
100%.
And so I love that that's what you're hammering in with these athletes right now. And because I'm sure from your angle, it's probably incredibly fulfilling to deliver an insight or a breakthrough to an athlete and then see their behavior change.
For sure.
Yeah.
I mean, I've experienced that with several athletes already this year, where it's like a couple months ago, they're quitting for sure. Like, I'm done with this. I don't want to do this anymore. And now fast forward a couple of months, seeing them thriving and, growing in all these different areas. It's just, you take a step back and it's like, man, it's kind of like one of those proud dad moments. Not to say that I'm the reason why they're not quitting, but it's just like having that conversation, helping them reflect on what is it that really matters most to you, and how can you make choices consistently that align with those things versus how you feel in the moment.
Yeah. I mean, that's got to be so fulfilling to see, an athlete have that insight and that breakthrough and then change the behavior and then really see someone course correct.
For sure.
Yeah. So let me ask you this, in a moment where like it's one thing to talk about it in the office, and it's one thing to talk about it like, hey, here's what you're going to do. Right. It's another thing that if it's in the Big 12 championship game and you just dropped a pass and now it's 4th down and you've got to show up the next play. Right.
Yeah.
What are some tips and some tools that someone can do to recover really, really quickly in a high stakes situation? Because again, it's one thing to do it in the game film in the coach's room. Right. But if it's like Big 12 championship on ESPN and it's 4th quarter, right, and I need to show up and perform right now, right?
Yeah.
What are some tools that you can use, like in the heat of the moment, I got to get back here, and what is something you could teach someone, whether it's obviously athletics, but in personal life too, kind of get back into a state where they don't slip up.
I love that question. It's a very timely question too, because it's something that I incorporate into. So each night before home and away games, I guide the whole team through a visualization meditation. And one of the things that I incorporate in that visualization meditation is imagining some sort of adversity happening throughout the course of a game, right? It's not a matter of if, but it's a matter of when. Bad call by the ref, miscommunication, a mistake, something like that. Because I think that's the first part of it, going back to what we were talking about earlier, is it's making a commitment to what I want to do before it happens, and seeing myself before it happens, responding in a way that's going to be most helpful for me. Because then when we get to the moment and it happens, it's like, I've already been here before mentally, so I know exactly, I've already made the commitment of what I was going to do. Yeah. I'm not waiting for the magnitude of the moment to dictate what I do. So I think that's first and foremost. One of the things is visualization and visualizing adversity. And then how am I going to respond in that moment that's going to be the most helpful way for me to respond? Yeah. Another part of it, and I actually had a couple guys that they made a wristband with a little button on it called a reset button. Cool. Because it's like our brain associates certain actions with certain outcomes, right? Yep. And so like you press a reset button, it's like, okay, whatever just happened is over with. Done, gone. Now it's just right here, right now sort of thing. And so anytime you can kind of associate like a physical cue with like a mental expectation or outcome, that can also help with that process. Another one, I learned this from Adam Thielen, wide receiver from Minnesota Vikings. I think it was a playoff game, and he, exactly what you just described, dropped a pass or something. It was a huge drop.
Yeah.
And then he was over on the sideline and kind of doing this sort of motion. Later in the game, fast forward, he ended up catching like the game-winning touchdown or something. Team went on. So of course the reporters are like, "We saw you on the sideline.
What was the finger thing?
Doing this thing?
Yeah.
Like, tell us about that." And he's like, flushing it. You go to the bathroom, you take a dump. Just sit and stare at it and just let it sit there, because then it just stinks and it's not effective. So you flush it and it goes away, right? So it's just another kind of like physical cue that kind of sends the message to your brain, like, that play is over with. I let it go.
It seems like the commonality between all this is really about getting incredibly present. It's being present in the moment, not ruminating on the past, not stuck in the anxiety of the future, but really just being where your feet are.
And if you look at the last 40 years of the sports psychology research, because they've done this, they want to say like, okay, so what variables actually contribute to the greatest sport performance, like on the mental side? So they looked at self-talk, confidence, team cohesion, all these different variables. And what they found had the greatest positive effect on sport performance, more so than anything else by a long shot, was mindfulness. And when you unpack the definition of mindfulness, it's exactly what you're talking about, is being in the moment intentionally without judgment.
Yeah, my favorite, and I mean, it's exactly the same definition, but my favorite definition of mindfulness is accepting the present moment exactly the way it is without wanting anything to be different.
Yep.
Just brings you right in the moment.
And it's one of those things, this is probably what I say to my athletes more than anything else, is it's easier said than done, because our brain is literally wired to be constantly trying to predict what's going to happen next, or constantly trying to prevent things that happened in the past that were painful from happening again. And so that's another one of the skills that I think is really helpful, is noticing when my mind goes there without judgment. Okay, I'm having this thought, I'm having this concern.
Yeah.
I'm really worried about this. And then accepting it. I don't have to like it, but I can accept that this is part of my experience right now. And then getting really intentional about, okay, what's the most helpful thing for me to focus on right now in this moment? And sometimes that could be, a deep breath. Sometimes it might be, like
grounding yourself,
touching the grass. I had a soccer athlete. She'd pick up some of the grass and just kind of play with it in her fingers, just to remind myself, like, I'm right here, right now.
Man, I'll never forget. I was in California one time. I was in Los Angeles. It was before I moved there. It's probably 2019. And I had a business meeting in the valley. So it was like an hour drive. I was staying in West Hollywood, and you had to go up the canyon. It was like an hour drive. And I remember waking up that morning, and I called to call an Uber, and I had some emails I had to get to. So I'm like, I can just knock out all these emails while I'm in the car. So I'm in my Uber, and it's that guy that picks you up that's just the chattiest dude ever. He's like, "Hey man, how's it going? Where are you coming from? What's going on? Oh my gosh, like, what are you up to today? Did you hear about the news? And I'm just like, dude, like, I'm like trying to do these emails, and he's just bugging me. Where are you from? I'm like, I'm from Utah. He's like, I used to grow up in Park City, and I'm like, ugh. And I like resisted it, and I was suffering.
Yeah.
Because I was resisting the reality of the moment.
Yeah.
And so rather than fighting him, I remember that definition of accepting the present moment exactly the way it is without wanting anything to be different.
Yeah.
So I took a deep breath, went, put my phone down, and just fully engaged with this dude. I'm like, and he was telling me about his favorite restaurants. He liked Tupelo restaurant up in Park City, and like he likes to ski the canyons and all these fun memories, yada, yada, yada. And we had a great chat. And so he finally dropped me off in the valley in this office building, and he turns around and he looks at me and he goes, "Thank you so much for talking with me today." He goes, "I don't even need to drive Uber. I live alone, and I'm a computer programmer, and I get very lonely. And the only reason I drive is for human interaction. And you just made my whole day."
Wow.
And I was like, whoa. And I was just lit up. And for the rest of the day, I felt like I was floating. I was feeling so fulfilled and so happy and so engaged. And it completely changed the trajectory of my entire day, where I could have been like, emails, business, I'm so important, blah, 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 and just kind of not present. And I'll never forget that moment of just like how powerful it is to just be completely present in the moment without wanting anything to be different, and the gift and the reward you'll get from that. So, I mean, you're right on the money there.
And that's probably the most rewarding part about my job is that I get to sit in a room like this with athletes, and they come and they share some pretty vulnerable stuff sometimes, and stuff that no one else would know about.
Yeah.
And the fact that I get to be a part of that experience, and usually there's tears involved and a lot of, sorry, my bad. And I'm like, in this space, you get to be human.
Yeah.
Outside of here, you can go be the big bad wolf that you have to be. And there's a time and a place for both of those things. But I'm like, we have to create spaces for people just to connect on a human level and be able to feel what they want to feel without judgment, without trying to escape it, without trying to make it go away, and just be present with whatever shows up.
You're going to love this concept. So one of my favorite spiritual teachers, his name's Ram Dass, and he was really popular in the 80s and 90s. He's since passed away. And there was a lecture of his I was listening to recently, and he said, my goal in life is to provide an environment where if I'm in relation with you and you want to come up for air, you can. And that was so profound to me. Just I'm not going to force you to come up. And when you come up, I'm not going to tell you how righteous I am and the things you need to do. But just if you just need to come up for air, you can.
Yeah, I love that.
I'm not going to force you up. I'm not going to make you come up, right? And if you do, I'm not going to shove anything down your throat. But if you're in relation with me and you need to come up for air, I can provide that environment for you.
I love that. Because it gives that sense of autonomy to the person, which is so crucial for change and motivation and a lot of these other things we talk about from a mental health and mental performance standpoint. Yeah. Funny because a lot of people think that my job, and it's interesting because I kind of go back and forth between both worlds of the mental health therapy side and then the mental performance side.
Yeah.
But a lot of people think that my job is just to give people advice all day. But honestly, I feel like my job is to listen, to try to understand, and then to ask questions.
Yeah.
And to help people kind of discover their own solutions, because most people have the solution within. It's just helping them rediscover it and come to the conclusion on their own. Some people want to be more guided and want to be told more what to do. But even still then, I help them understand that you coming up with the solution yourself and self-talk and a process for you is way more important than anything I tell you to do, because you're way more committed and invested when it comes from you.
Yep. So good, man. Really inspiring, brother.
Can I share just one more thing?
Absolutely.
So the whole presence thing, this is something that stuck with me. So part of the conversation we didn't address is that I started my high school career at Judge Memorial Catholic High School. And I had some great experiences there, some not so great experiences. But honestly, my favorite part about attending that school was every single day we'd start off with the Serenity Prayer. This is something that I share with all my athletes because I think it helps encompass this idea of mindfulness. But it's, God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. And that's because we always talk about control what you can control, but I really do think it takes a willingness to step back and say okay, what actually in this situation that I'm dealing with is in my control? And can I have the courage to keep my focus there, even though I'm going to be tempted and, get distracted by the things that are outside of my control? Because that's really when we can start to be empowered and liberated and start to make some really good progress.
So empowering too.
Yeah.
Right. Just kind of allowing you to, be in what we've talked about, just deep presence.
Yeah.
Really powerful, man. You're doing really inspiring work, brother. Before we wrap up, my final question is, what can we expect from the Cougs this year on a football level?
I want to rewind this episode when we start listening to it, because you had a quote and I want to print it off because I know that you're a Ute, and this is a great reminder that Utes and Cougs can coexist and the world can still go around, and it's okay. It's funny because most of my best friends in life are diehard Utah fans.
Yeah.
Topher, Matthew Van Wagner.
Yeah, me and
Travis
Matthew
Tucker.
are neighbors.
Are you really?
Yeah, we live like 8 houses away.
Really?
Yeah.
It's my guy.
Yeah.
Lots of shout outs, lots of great people. And that's a great reminder for this too, is that relationships are so important. But
yeah.
I mean, I think that we have the talent, we have the ability. It's just going to be a matter of keeping guys healthy and keeping guys focused on the right things. But I think that we have a shot to have a pretty good year this year.
Yeah, I think the way BYU's schedule lined up is you've got some kind of your first couple of games, you can kind of really work out what's working, what's not working, give guys some opportunity.
Yeah.
I think you should definitely roll your first couple of games. And I'm excited to come back down here in, what is it, October? When Utah plays, I think it's 17th.
Yeah, the week after my birthday.
Yeah. So hopefully the Utes can pull one out, but you never know. Those games are always so fun.
Well, I had a little bit of my own internal processing. So last year, because the last time I played the University of Utah, it was we got the field goal blocked, so we got to re-kick it because it was offsides, and we doinked it off the uprights.
Yep.
And so we're going same thing last year, and I'm like, oh my gosh, this is deja vu. I've seen how this ends. But yeah, it's crazy.
Knocked it in.
It's a great rivalry.
So much fun.
Glad it's back in full force.
And I would say this last thing is my favorite game is BYU Utah at Lavelle. I like it at Lavelle more than I like it at Rice Eccles. They just being in that hostile environment.
Yeah.
Just gets me so fired up. So I'm excited for the Cougs. I think Bear's going to be a great player. Sounds like he's got he has the grit that you were talking about from what you've read. I mean, I've never seen him play, but it's going to be, I think both teams are going to be competing, and it's really fun when both teams are good.
For sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's what you want it to be. You want our best against your best, and then kind of just battle it out on the field. We love the competition. Yeah. Well, Braden, thanks for coming on the show, man. Really inspiring stuff. It's really cool what you're doing, and I just can't imagine the impact you're making for those athletes over there. Well, I appreciate you, Doug. Thanks so much for having me. Of course, brother.